Hello and welcome to this episode of the Zoom Room Sessions as part of our Thriving Tribe project. I'm David Francis Moore, and this is my colleague.
I'm Juliette Harvey.
And today we are joined on the show by Vukašin Nedeljkovic, who is an artist, activist, and is an independent scholar. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Juliette. This is a funny one, a tricky one for me, because I'm 14 years in Ireland, and it's only because my dad started to come to visit me and my family only 7 years ago, and it's only when he comes here, and there'll be once a year when I actually did speak with him my native or our native language, which was called at the time Serbo-Croat language. So I would like to answer this question first in English, and then in Serbo-Croat, if I can, I'll do my best, because believe it or not, I almost forgot it. You know, I can't write it ever. I still can barely speak, but we'll try. So in those terms, I would really like to define myself as first and foremost as a refugee. I think that's very important to kind of ground myself. You know, and when I mean the refugee, it means a person who has been extremely lucky after living 3.5 years in direct provision only to be given an international protection from the Government of Ireland or Department of Justice. Well, I'm saying this is for us who have lost our homes, who have lost our countries through the various atrocities from inside and the outside. We need to find, to be able to become anything else, we need to find a sense of belonging. The sense of belonging is at the end of the day a country, okay? Although it may not be the country, but in my case, I always wanted to belong to a country. So after 10 years or 11 years of being stateless, as you can imagine, coming to Ireland with Yugoslavian passport, and then trying to communicate with any officials, and they would say, well, where is that country? That country doesn't exist. But I said, it existed. Anyway, so it took me some time, 11 years really, until, or 12 years until I became a naturalized citizen of Ireland. Okay. Throughout that process, which was extremely painful, difficult, and harrowing, I would say, I remembered at some point while living in the room 24 in Ballyhoney's Direct Provision Center that I have a BA, or I'm a graduate photographer. It is only that small Olympus camera that my dad almost forced me to take and say, he said, you never know how you can use it, is that rediscovery of that camera and starting to use it in Ballyhoney's Direct Provision Center. And that's the time when I would like to say that helped me significantly. And that's that creative process of only doing one thing, and that's pressing the button on the camera, taking the photographs, was significant and the most important part of me overcoming incarceration and confinement created by the Irish state, which is direct provision. That was the origin of Asylum Archive. Those photographs that I've taken over the 3 years in Ballyhoney's, mainly Ballyhoney's Direct Provision Center. There were not many of them, maybe a couple of hundreds, but they're the pivotal and they're the foundation or the skeleton of what is going to become after I did my master's in visual arts practice in Dunlaoghaire, former Mavis, what is going to become through conversation with my brilliant tutors at the time, Asylum Archive. So that's it. That's the beginning, and that's how it started. Okay, so I would define, if that's the word, define myself as refugee, still a person living in exile, no matter how much this is my country, no matter how much this is my home, no matter how much I will never, ever, no matter how hard it can get, emigrate anywhere else, you know. So, um, uh, and I am an artist, and all my work since 2006, really, since I came here, up to 2020, is on the representation of direct provision. And it is the visual representation of direct provision. Alongside with that, I also very much involved from very beginning, even pre-formation of MASI, which is a movement of asylum seekers in Ireland, in terms of activist work, again, in relation to complete abolishment of direct provision and ending all of deportations. So, yeah, so that's me. So trying in Serbo-Croat now, and I specifically say this because, you know, this is very tricky now. Like, it was actually in curriculum in former Yugoslavia, where I was born, it was written as Serbo-Croat. And when the trouble started in the 90s, you know, and I wouldn't like to say anything wrong about my former neighbors, Croats, but they have invented something like 120, 130 words, right? That were never been there before, right? Those words mean something to them, but for us who were born in Yugoslavia, even Croats, it was just like completely doesn't make any sense. Just to differ, let's say, Serbian language from Croatian language, okay? And then when the troubles were going on, 1992, I remember in my professor of Serbo-Croat at the time, she said, "Now it's not Serbo-Croat, it's Serbian," okay? So that's how it is, you know, and it was absolutely brutal because the language is the grammar, the words, it's the same, right? There's no difference, right? Really. It's absolutely the same, you know, and yeah, so but the one thing I would like to say also, and going about kind of trying to maybe overly personalize this is one of the reasons why I forgot my Serbo-Croat language was because one of the reasons why I was applying for international protection in Ireland is that Serbs are deemed or have committed the biggest atrocities. If you look at Srebrenica, was the biggest genocide after the Second World War in Europe. Okay, so we did exterminate Muslims, for example. We did exterminate them in huge numbers, right? And I was very ashamed of that. And then somehow, consciously or unconsciously, I tried to forget that language, making a very big mistake. The first mistake was that my daughter, 11-year-old Koch, doesn't speak any words of Serbian or Serbo-Croat. And the second thing, that Serbo-Croat was not the language of people who murdered other people, but it was also language of my grandparents that I miss immensely, you know. But that language is, you know, it's kind of, it sounds very much like Russian, but it's not like Russian. It's a Slavic language. Therefore, it is in the same group of the languages, but it's Cyrillic as well. For example, I have to say now Serbian, because Croat wouldn't. They would be going towards a Latin way of writing it. So anyhow, so okay. Moje ime je Vukašin, ja sam se rodio u Beogradu 1975. godine u bivšoj Jugoslaviji. Ja sam imao 5 godina kada je Tito umro i to je bila prekretnica nekog našeg života. 1990. godine je počeo rat sa Slovenijom. 1991. godine ja sam imao 16 godina kada sam izašao na ulice Beograda i protestovao protiv Miloševića i tada diktatorskog režima. To je trajalo negde oko 13-14 godina dok nisam skupio hrabrosti i da kažem ja to više ne mogu, i otišao sam iz Beograda i nikad se više nisam vratio i došao sam u Irsku da tražim politički azil da sam posle nekog vremena živeći u DP postao izbjeglica i postao irski državljanin. Tokom mog života u Beogradu ja sam se bavio umjetnošću, ja sam se bavio fotografijom i to je ono, imali smo u bivšoj Jugoslaviji jako dobru, odličnu školu i edukaciju, tako da sam sve to nekako uspeo da prenesem ovdje u Irsku i da nastavim da budem umjetnik, zbog čega mi je vrlo drago. Okay, so one thing I would like to explain here is, okay, who is an artist? Let's talk about Irish discourse. Okay, so who can call herself or himself an artist in Ireland? Okay, who has that power and who has that permission? Okay, now what does artist mean? If you are working in your studio every day, painting or drawing for decades, are you an artist? If you are going out on the streets or taking photographs for a couple of decades and have maybe, I don't know, 20,000 photographs, are you an artist? So what will define you an artist? And I will have to say this, and this may sound brutal, but it is the truth, and it is the truth of many of my colleagues. I was prior to coming to Ireland, being an artist for a decade. Then I was in Ireland and I was an artist for a decade, but I was not an artist until I got Arts and Activism bursary from Create. That kind of, in the arts world, did validate my position as an artist. And I'm talking about this, that I completely disagree with this. I completely disagree with the policy of Arts Council, for one. I completely disagree with that you have to make a living to be an artist, okay? And I completely disagree that you have to get any bursaries to become an artist. So you're an artist and you're an artist, but as an artist, you got to live. You have to pay the rent, you have to buy the food, you know, and that sacrifice. And you know, if I knew it's going to be this hard in Ireland, I would still do it for only one reason, and that's the time I'm going back to 2007, and I even remember the month. I arrived there in April. This was June, when I looked at the ceiling and I said, "Ah, fuck, man, sorry, but if I don't do this, right, if I don't document direct provision, I doubt that there will be any other person who's going to do that." Up to today, talking about 14 years after, nobody did it, really. There were some projects going around it, okay, that I'm mostly very critical of, not because I'm trying to say I'm the boss or my work is the most important, but because they lay on the principles of romanticization and aestheticization, okay? I think this is very important. My work is brutal. It's nothing but a really documentary photography, showing, exposing direct provision as it is the brutal system of a racist system of incarcerating the most vulnerable people who only came to Ireland to seek protection. So when people meet me and say, "Oh, you're an artist and you're doing good," you know, it was very hard. I spent 10 years. My work has not been shown in the White Cube for 7 years until Maeve Mulrennan from Galway Arts Centre said, "Okay, have a show here." It was the first show for Asylum Archive. Before that, for the 7 years, I showed the work only through PowerPoint presentations in academic contexts. That's why I started the PhD. Hate PhD. I don't want to do a PhD. I'm an artist, you know, but to be able to show the work, you know, I was invited to different conferences, and the work was shown only through the PowerPoint presentations. And that's how it existed. And that's how I think it will exist, because for the last 13 years, working as a full-time artist, and I would say full-time employed artist, I got two grants. One was that I mentioned now from Create. The second one was Arts and Disability Ireland, and that's it, you know. And you know, where does that leave me, really? Where does this leave me is the compulsive, obsessive desire to answer this question of mine. You know, if I don't do it, you know, I don't think anybody will do it. And why it has to be done is only for learning. Okay, it's only so we may, as an Irish society, try not to repeat the same mistakes. We did it after magazine launches, industrial schools, and other carceral sites. We do it again, you know. So maybe, you know, maybe we learn, you know. And when I talk about my work in Greece, I did and doing a lot of research in the European context. I also realized it's very little being done in the European context, you know. So what I'm trying to do, and if you go to the website, you will see it's the same thing. I went to the camps in Greece. There's nobody's of asylum seekers. There's nobody's refugees. Only what is there is their living conditions, really, and their dwellings or no dwellings or horrific living conditions, and that's it, you know. So and again, as I would want it really not to expose Ireland or to Ireland to say, nobody wants an apology. Asylum seekers, they don't want apology. Nobody wants an apology. They want to be free. They want to move on. They want to work. They want to pay the tax. They want to contribute to the society. They want to be free. That's a very good question. Now, I would cite here Tucker Campbell. He was writing a lot about the queer and queerness in New York at the time, and the way that the AIDS has been wiping down the communities in America at the time. I'm just going to say this is not my archive. This is our archive, and the most important thing, they do not own the archive. Okay, when I say they, I mean the establishment, the government. They do not own the archive. You know, at the moment, I'm running it, I'm curating it, but very happily in a year, especially if I move to European context, I'll find somebody who experienced direct provision, and you know, he or she can run the archive. So the archive is for everybody who's willing to look, and again, repeat this, the most appalling and brutal way we treat people who come to Ireland to seek protection. Now, I kind of struggled a lot with that word entrepreneurship, you know, and I kind of had to look yesterday prior to this conversation what entrepreneurship is, you know, and you know, there are lots of different kind of explanations or connotations, but one of them would be that entrepreneurship, and in the beginning we mentioned the word industry, which I kind of really don't doesn't go very well with me. I hate it, you know. Also the word of growth, you know, that our government is always talking growth. You know, what is the growth? Growth is nothing but the accumulation of the capital, okay? It is the accumulation of the money, right? You know, shit, you know, I should have chosen better profession, being a banker or being a solicitor. I wouldn't be homeless today, but I couldn't, you know. I know what to do. The best thing I know what to do is to click and observe. Observing is the key part of being a photographer, I think. You observe a lot and then you click what you have observed, you know. So if entrepreneurship would mean, for me, it would mean only one way, that the knowledge, okay, and you can say that the Asylum Archive is the 14 years of knowledge. I think it is truth, okay? The knowledge can be equally distributed to every single person in Ireland and beyond. If that's entrepreneurship, that's for me entrepreneurship. That's Asylum Archive, and that's what it is. I had a launch of the book. The book was 30 euros, way cheaper than any books are. Really, it was still inaccessible for asylum seekers, for example, right? The main home, it will always remain the main home of Asylum Archive will be the web presence because it's free. Everybody can access it. It's not ideal, has loads of, obstacles there. The book may be, again, book is not perfect. So, is that kind of what Stuart Hall calls it, like living archive, open-ended archive. So it can exist almost everywhere, it can exist almost everywhere. And that's the good thing. But the most important thing is that people know about it, and the only and people who are marginalized or people who are poor, they can access it online, and it's pretty much all there. Yeah, there are some brilliant examples of artists who are doing absolutely amazing work. I may even mention some, the work of Sarah Brown is absolutely phenomenal. The work of Dominic Thorpe, Seamus Nolan, just to mention a few, and I'm not really sure, really, I mean, I think we just have to move on from the concept of let's say as a painter of the landscapes. Okay, so if a painter wants to paint a landscape, okay, that's fine. Okay, that's totally fine. That can be very healing. Okay, but I would really like to know, what does that work communicate with the audience? I think art, in my view, has to be political. Okay, art is political. It has to be political. It has to outline extremely difficult, terrible, devastating conditions for many, many people in this country. And before, I struggled a lot because the Asylum Archive is more or less complete. It will never be completed. I will work on it for the rest of my life, but it is there, really. They didn't open more direct provision centers, didn't open more emergency accommodation centers, so it's all there. So that thing, when I went to Greece, and I overstayed in Greece just because I said, God, I have to do this, I was dwelling and thinking, shall I now work with travelers? Shall I work with drug addiction? Shall I work with disabled? Shall I work with homeless? And I said, no, I want to work in the refugee or asylum seeker context, for the rest of my days. And I think that's where my strength is, and that's I think what I'm good at. But other artists, especially socially engaged arts practitioners, have a long way to go. And to create the art, to point out the difficulties that people endure. And even if, let's say, my work can change the mind of one person saying, oh, geez, is that really what is the provision? Then I'm happy. I'm very happy. Yeah, it just depends really in the way we look at the entrepreneurship. It's really depends how we define it. It depends what does it mean for people. I'll be very suspicious of entrepreneurship grants for artists. Okay, I'll be very critical of it. In terms that not the grant or the money you may get will have to shape your practice. You do your practice, you do your work, and then if that fits within any of the grants, that'll be fine. Ideally, we wouldn't need any grant. If this would be, I don't know, personally, let's say more of a socialist it was never really implemented in the world, but more like a barging country. I wouldn't need any grant, why would I need a grant, if I can, let's say you work in Carlo, okay, so let's say for Emma, I don't know, I devise an exhibition in the visual, okay, and then she has she has a flat in Dublin. You know, she says, "Oh, you can stay in my flat in Dublin for, I don't know, 5 years." And I say, "Oh, fantastic! This is all you can have all the works. You know, it all belongs to the visual. You know, somebody else will say, "Oh, there is my work. You know, here, and oh, you have a. I run a restaurant, so you have a free access to restaurant for 2 years." The money as a concept really is, in my view, you know, and I could be radical, but I don't think so, is only for richer to get more rich and for poor to get more poor, you know. And an artist really, I think in that I can see myself as an artist is to try to smash it really. And when I say smash it, I literally mean smash it. And I was dwelling a lot about that, you know, what's the way forward really in terms of direct provision and everything, you know. I mean, I sat on so many meetings, you know, I read so many reports, you know, and now I'm just thinking more and more and more. And I wouldn't be the only one. I have like academic friends, really serious academics who think that Antifa, right, for example, you know, punching Nazis in the face is the way to go, really. I wouldn't condone the violence. I wouldn't personally ever do it, you know. But Antifa doesn't mean only violence. It means like total resistance, you know. It means disobedience, you know. It means, like for example, it's a perfect example of that is, and I don't know, have you been to Athens, for example, Exarchia? That's a quarter in Athens, but there is like it's such a vital, it's the heart of Athens, really. It's not Acropolis anymore. It's Exarchia. That's where not only Antifa is, that's where not only punks are or radical left is, but that's where poets are, that's where the artists are, that's where the homeless are, that's where squats are for refugees, you know? So, I mean, I don't know, you know, yeah, I can't say much, you know, having 11-year-old daughter that I don't see a lot these days, but I hope to see, you know, I can't emigrate anywhere else. And to be honest, you know, on the other side, I mean, apart from the state of this government, I mean, Irish people that I have met over the last 14 years are sound. They are really decent people in every single, whether it's arts or, you know, whichever, but you know, they're nice people. So we need a, I think we need a riot. We need a revolution. That's a great. I want to answer that before you ask me this question. I think this is very important. I have seen many artists who became educators, like professors in university, who would say to me, "You must not undertake any art project until you have the funding." Right? I said, "Okay." Then I said, "No, that's not going to happen. You got to make the work." Right. If you have the funding, for example, the work is going to flow, right? If you don't have the funding, the why Asylum Archive took 10 years or 11 years to be completed is because I had to travel to every single part, even to Carlo, guys, you know, on the bus with a packed lunch, you know, and it took 10 years because I had no funding, but I still did it. You have to do it one way or the other. For me, that's so important. You got to do it, right? If you think that your work is gonna try to say something, to communicate with anybody, you got to do it. You can't wait for funding. And I don't wait for fun. Even now, if I get half homeless and get a studio apartment in Dublin, the first thing I'm gonna do, and that's what keeps me alive now, and I would like to point that is I'm dreaming to going to starting from Greece, Turkey, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. This is my 5 to 7 year plan to go to every European country, and then including states to document detention center for asylum seekers. And you know, some people, if you're maybe Catholic, they would say like, "Oh, that's my mission." You know, if you're an atheist, you know, like myself, you know, you would say like, "Just gotta do it," you know, just gotta do it, and then we'll discuss it afterwards, you know. So yeah, so I think there's a big problem for artists, and I've seen many artists when I was doing, let's say, a bit of teaching here and there. It takes ages for them to show the work, you know, and it shouldn't be this kind of white cube exclusionary. Really, it should be accessible to everybody, and it's try and fail. You have an exhibition, show the work. If it doesn't work really for you or for the audience, do it again. It's fine. But artists, young people, they don't get even a chance to practice that. They take 5, 6, 7 years to show their work, and they're devastated. People take like 300, 400, 500 euros a month for this dodgy studio with no heating. Imagine that. Like, artists in this country are poor. They're on the margins of the society, and yet in the sheds, in the most awful conditions, they still continue to make the work. And I admire people who do that. I really admire. No, absolutely. The first two ones that came to my mind, I would like to reflect briefly on them. The one is the vision. You need to have the vision, right? And I'm not talking at this from the point of an entrepreneur, right? I'm talking about this from a point of an artist. Okay, so you need to have the vision, what you would like to do, and how would you like to do, right? Once when you have a vision, then you can move towards manifesting the vision. In terms of my work, ethics, right, are extremely important. That's the main reason why I don't have bodies of asylum seekers in my work, right? Now, this is very important. So who am I now to be competing with people who, let's say, represented Ireland at the Venice Biennale, like Richard Moss? Who am I? I think his work is absolutely horrific, right? I think, the photographs I could cope with somehow, although I never understood why they had to be with that ultra red film, or why they had to be pink. But when he started with his camera crew to invade, right, in the Congolese villages, right, without asking anybody for any permission, right, imposing on them all the time, showing the part. You've seen his work in RHA, maybe if you didn't go to Venice Biennale. And then the art students will say, well, and this is really up to curators. It is the curator of the Butler Gallery at the time who selected his work. His work is unethical. He never actually did. When I actually did challenge him and a few other people, to come out and to explain his positionality. And this is just one bad example. There are so many bad examples. The last you've seen the Nostra Barca, I think that's called, Victor Bruegel, I think it's his name, who showed his work at the Venice Biennale. He rescued the boat who sunk in Lampedusa, right? 2 million for a project. My God, like, I got furious, right? Not only they could see people drinking champagne, expensive cheese, and beside this beautiful boat now, the boat looks beautiful. It's a real boat, right? It looks beautiful. It has a patina there and a bit of, it's fun. It's a beautiful boat, but hold on a second. So many layers of exploitation there. One is for 2 million, you can open, I don't know how many hospitals for how many years for refugees at the present, right? And the second thing, drinking champagne, being so removed from the tragedy where 2,000 people have drowned in the Mediterranean, is just nothing but pervert, So ethics, and because of ethics, and it is only because because curators at the beginning said, come on, like, where are the bodies there? I said, there's no bodies, only ghosts. And I didn't get so many opportunities that could provide me with an income, really, at the time. I just had to say, no bodies, really. And that's it. You gotta stand for that, and what used to give me such a great pat on my back is people who are living still in dread provision that somehow found out about my work, and they just said, like, thank you, just keep doing what you're doing. And that's that's because of this less than 6,000 people that I really want to see free, you know. I will not stop. I cannot stop. I can't. It's too late now anyway. No, I think that's a very important question. Collaboration. I think Creative has a huge emphasis on that kind of collaborative arts practices. I did collaborate with only handful of people really as art professionals. You know, we just kind of don't really get on very well. But when Corona started, I started to make this film. Really, it will be a feature film about direct provision, and then I thought, okay, I'm gonna try to film this and that, you know, and then all of my idea I had at the time stopped until the people in direct provision found out somehow that I'm doing this, and they started with their phones to film their environment. So I have 45 minutes of unprecedented material, right? That is not going to be my work. I'm not even going to edit it. All I'm going to do is join the clips. It's not my work. It's their work. So they will be my collaborators, really. And all I can say, and I wouldn't even say like, you know, the only thing I would say maybe like move that camera slightly there so it has a bit more light, you know, so I can see. It's only that really, but it's there. It's there. It's who am I? Like I've been removed from that environment now. For the last 10 years, who am I to say the story? The only story I'm saying is the story of my memory, which is valid as well. But they're living, let's say, with Corona direct provision, which is the breach of everything. Really, it's like it's horrific. There's no social distance. It's bed to bed, and those guys are filming that. You know, and or you know, guys, I would say men and women too, you know. So I think that's what I'm going to be working, you know. Again, no funding, you know, nothing. But you know, while I would like to get the funding is just to pay them, really, just to give them few, although it wouldn't be legal, but fuck, you know, just give them few bobs, you know, for the work they do, you know. So that's really it. Yeah, I'm happy. So yeah, I'm hoping that's going to be something. It's going to take time, you know. Now I have an access to computer only once a week, you know. Yeah, it's very slow down, but yeah, it's never going to go away, really. I mean, the link between you know, what the government did with Corona and direct provision, deciding not to move people out, like in Cahir Savine in Skellig Hotel there, DP is just like it's unbelievable, really. I have to be very careful, right? I have to be very careful, not because of the, let's say, the symbol or the emblem or whatever Asylum Archive became over the last 14 years. I have to be very careful to who am I collaborating with, right? And I'll give you an example, you know, of an artist recently graduated from NCD, and I'll say this publicly, I don't mind, who is actually, and you know, pre-corona, I would get maybe at least once per week a request from an artist to collaborate with, right? And in most cases, I learned, it was very difficult, but I learned to say no, okay? I also learned to say why I think I'm saying no. And also I've learned to say that, for example, for this artist who was actually asking me to give him the names of people in direct provision, okay? So we're talking about the names, addresses, right? So he can go and meet them, right? And then through his own way, right? I would use the word provoke their tears, right? So they would cry and he would collect their tears, right? And exhibit their tears. So we are talking about the NCAD, right? We're talking about the leading white cube space in Ireland that approved this work, right? And I'm not talking only about re-traumatization of one, you know, I'm talking about exploitation of one, And I'm saying, who the hell on earth would allow this to happen? But this is happening, you know, and this is continuing. And I think this why I think education is the key. Education is so important, you know, to people who are refugees still may have lost everything, but the only thing they have left is agency. They're still humans, you know, and that's what we have lost so badly in Corona. We lost our humanity, you know. We became afraid of everything, you know, and I didn't, you know, because I didn't, I lost my marriage, but that's okay, you know. It was meant to be lost anyway, you know. So, you know, that's a totally different, you know, for a different Zoom chat, you know, about Corona and all that. But yeah, uh, really, you know, we have to have that education in the schools. And I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about the primary schools, about refugees, you know, about, for example, Alan Kurdi's bodies of a boy was found on the shores, you know, and that lasted in the European media context for a couple of weeks. But how many Alan Kurdi's have died since, you know? And that kind of thing, you know, that this is continuing, you know, and it's all about Corona. It was in Irish media, it was Brexit that almost killed me. Now it's Corona, you know, and it's, you know, still, you know, pre-Corona, with Corona, during Corona, and after Corona, the lives of people who are, you know, in my work, like refugees and asylum seekers, are not going to get any better, if not worse, you know. And direct provision is not to go, you know. Unfortunately, it's there to stay, and no matter how much we try, it's there to stay. So I just don't know, you know, sometimes I just, yeah. I think reading, like, I don't know, well, I was living with my stepson. He's 90 now, and when I uh, kind of was made aware the curriculum really of his secondary school, I was just like, wow. Well, like, that's, you know, I mean, I in former Yugoslavia, you know, I went to gymnasium, right, and I mean, the whole summer we just had to read and read and read. I think reading is very important, okay? But what you read, okay, is also very important, okay? So I think reading, you know, more reading, more subjects in Irish education would not be any harm, you know. Um, um, Particularly, you know, education with you can frame it anyway, but with the marginalized and oppressed members of this society. I'm talking about refugees, asylum seekers. I'm talking about homeless. Talking about travelers. I'm talking about education racism. You know, I mean, Irish young people, no, they say like, "I'm not racist," but as soon as you say that, you know, that's it. You know, but I wouldn't blame them really per se. It's the lack of education. And what is racism? I think Ireland is one of the perfect examples, you know, of the combination of institutional racism, you know, that operates through direct provision, for example, and individual racisms, you know. For me, I have never experienced individual racism until Corona, but lots of people of color have done, you know, and you know, it's very brutal on the streets, you know. And I don't know what was in Carlo in the middle of in the peak of Corona, but Dublin was, wow, it's brutal, absolutely brutal, you know. And you know, I just want to say, I think education still, whether you want to pursue with your degree or a PhD, doesn't matter. I think education is very important. It has to be part of curriculum, really, has to be obligatory. Yeah, I don't know really. I was in, let's say, Irish education for some time, you know, and I would know part of certain curriculums, you know, in let's say primary, secondary, or school or university, you know. I just don't think it's enough. I just think we need way, way, way more than that. The students have to be challenged really more. Um, and they have to observe this. What I think is very important: critical thinking. Right? That's what's lacking. Critical thinking. Really, you have to critique. You can critique so many things in this country, so many things in this Europe, so many things in this world, but you need to be developed. I think um, people have to step in, step up. They have to be, more brave. We did it with water charges, we did it with repeal the aid, we did it with the marriage referendum. I don't see why we cannot do it with um, direct provision. I don't see why we cannot do it with homeless. I don't see why people, where there's so many empty houses, have to be homeless. But until we smash the capitalism and neoliberalism, nobody's going to be okay. Nobody. So let's say, reading even Karl Marx, would be, for me, very important part of the curriculum. What he tried to say, not that it was ever implemented, but like that kind of equality. Everybody is, we're all the same. We are all the same at the end of the day. But as an artist, I think you are in a kind of very privileged position that you may comprehend that. So you may try to translate that inequality into your art, and I think that's very crucial. So what I would like to see 5 years time, less of a landscapes and more very critical artwork on the omnipresent issues in this society. Okay, so then when we go to Michael D's office next time, we present him that and we say, listen, we did a bit of a research, on this, and this is what we found. And we found traveler accommodation across Ireland appalling, for example. We found during COVID that in direct provision in homeless shelter, there were 7, 8, 9 people in the room, bed to bed. Where is the social distance there? Where is the justice there? Well, again, value in terms, if we want to translate the value into money, then I don't value myself at all, but I value really, it's really, yeah. I don't know if the value is the right word, and I don't know if I can answer this question, David, because the for the moment you wake up, the moment you go to sleep, most of your time really, and in my case, you spend you really spend working as an artist, really, and that's it. Like you don't have to make an art, but you observe, you write notes, you talk to people, you gather the information. So you are, and then one day it's that kind of blah. The easiest thing really is to click. For example, on the photo camera, click. That's easy. Get the frame, click. That's easy, But prior to that, all the research, all the accumulation of the knowledge, that's the serious work, And it starts it's every day. So value myself as an artist, yeah, I don't know. It's for me at the moment, I don't even think I'm an artist. For me it's a pure survival. It's surviving from 1 hour to the other. Living in a homeless shelter, brutal toxic masculinity, everybody on heroin. That's reality. So that's the thing, is when there is a possibility that artistic impulse or endeavor can be taken away from you, but I don't think that's going to be the case for me anyway. So yeah, one day at a time, and just wait patiently. Yeah, well, I can always say things that I think that okay, it's so hard in Ireland, right? It is brutal in Ireland, okay? So you will have months, years when you will maybe not be able to pay your rent, when you will not be able to pay your studio. Maybe there will be time when you will be hungry because you bought chalks or a new camera, it is every single, I think most of the elements or the structures of this society will try in the best of their ways to prevent you to be artists, to be creative. I will never say you failed, ever. I will have a compassion because I know it's brutal, okay? If you can, take one day at a time, step by step, until you are in a position to do the work you want to do. And you will have that, but it's unbelievably hard. It's so hard. It's very, very hard. And I don't want to discourage anybody. I think some people, everyone say because it's hard, because because it is so hard, you got to be prepared that it's so hard out there. You're kind of cocooned with your tutors, with your arts students, and also stick together, really. I mean, I don't know if we can hug each other now, but like hug each other, stay together, even work together, different ways, but like don't let this system break you down, because they specifically they don't want artists, they want more Google Docs. Next one in Kilkenny, or in Carlo, sorry. That's what they want, more bankers, less creatives. And if they want an art, they're going to buy an artwork from, the best thing I've seen from Jeff Koons, the best thing I've seen yesterday, the day before, was in New York in one of the galleries when there was a show of this kind of amazing artists like Jeff Koons, Murakami, and the lads broke it in, right? Destroyed the place, stole all the artworks, and that's the thing, like, okay, so are they hooligans, right? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, are they trying to say something? Why the fuck Jeff Koons' artwork is worth like, I don't know, millions, while other people are living here on let's say 10,000 euros if they're lucky to get Arts Council grant per year. Ah, man, So yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Freedom. It's a libertà, freedom. That's it. Yeah, freedom has so much, you have to pay so much price, but it is freedom, really. It is freedom. It is freedom, and it is freedom of free thinking, right? It's the freedom of free thinking and the freedom of being creative, I mean, I met some gorgeous students at the time in masters who were so more talented than me, ended up working with multinationals, to make their ends meet, So in my case, I wouldn't be a perfect example to anybody. So don't quote me on this, because if you follow his example, you're homeless, So don't do that, But still, you gotta dream, you gotta keep dreaming of a better future, of a better life for all included.
This has been the Zoom Room Sessions, and this has been Vukašin Nedeljkovic. Vukašin, if people want to find out more about your work, what is your website? What is your social media handles?
All the work can be accessed on www.asylumarchive.com. There will be the links to social media accounts there. And also, if I may say, there is just pre-corona work have started in Greece on a very similar, let's say, visual methodology as Asylum Archive, and that's called fortresseu.com, and it's the work I have done with refugees, in particularly camps in Greece.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.